Hey, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond the Ballot.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Ballot podcast. I'm Rachel, here with Amanda and 150 of our closest friends.
This is our first live recording of Beyond the Ballot. We're here in beautiful Vancouver, and I have to say, your city is warmer than mine.
Yeah, no kidding.
It was gorgeous when I arrived.
Did you just get snow in Toronto? Is that what I heard?
We did. Yeah.
Does anyone in Vancouver remember having snow? I barely. No. Anyone own a shovel in the city? No, they're laughing because they don't. How was your flight? How's Vancouver been? How's it treating you?
Vancouver's been great. I love coming up to this coast. I love it. It's such a beautiful, I don't know if the novelty wears off for people who live on the coast,
No.
but coming from flat, beautiful Ontario. I have to give shout outs to my Ontarians. Coming out here is always, I went for a long walk along the waterfront. You can see the mountains in the distance, and it's just so gorgeous.
So gorgeous. And you've been here many times, I think, but you've never been to Granville Island, where we're sitting right now.
I know.
Which is a major tourist attraction in Vancouver, and I'm going to put it out there for anyone listening to come here and see Granville Island, because there's so much to do. We'll have to get you back to come explore.
I'll come back with my kiddos next time.
Well, speaking of kiddos, you were away last week.
We March braked hard.
We March braked hard. And you know what? I solo podcast hard.
You did, and you really carried it for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for leaving me with 3 Gen Zers last week. I was talking to them about the person that equates to Taylor Swift in Canadian politics. That's what I was chatting about as you were with your children on spring break.
I envy you, actually.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot. From the Gen Zers. It's a great episode, and they apparently there is no person as cool as Taylor Swift in Canadian politics, which I disagree with, obviously, but they didn't seem to have a good answer for that one.
Oh, Rachel.
So we know our audience is very excited to hear from our special guest. So our guest today has been all over the headlines recently. After a decade as an MLA and a minister in British Columbia, including as British Columbia's finance minister, Selina Robinson made waves a few weeks ago by making a comment that Israel was just a, quote, crappy piece of land. That statement led to a resignation from cabinet and ultimately the decision to leave the BC NDP caucus, citing rampant anti-Semitism within it.
Prior to being elected to the BC legislature, Selina spent years as a therapist, sat as a city councillor. We are so thrilled about having this conversation. We'd love to welcome Selina to join us on the stage.
It's so nice to have a guest live and be able to hug you. Usually you're on a screen.
You can't hug on screen.
No, you can't. Doesn't work. All right. So you have told us that you are an open book here and you want to talk about your story, and we want to hear it all. Okay? So I'm going to just start and I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to say you have had a life-changing few weeks.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Everyone keeps asking me that, and I want to thank you all for asking. I'm doing better now. I am doing much better now.
Mm-hmm.
Those first few days, it was January 30th that I was on a panel of speakers, and I know they were talking about women in politics.
Yeah.
BaB was hosting this panel, and I looked at their lineup, and it was all men.
Mm.
They didn't have a single woman identified, and they were all from back east, as we say here on the West Coast. When they approached me, it's like, absolutely. I'd be the only Democrat. I'd be the only woman, and I'd be the only woman from the West. So it's like, yes, you need to have a balanced representation. Little did I know that when I was reflecting on the next generation of Canadians. The data that we have for 18 to 34-year-olds who didn't understand the Holocaust, couldn't name a concentration camp, didn't understand the history and the connection that Jewish people had to the land of Israel. Little did I know that it would turn my world upside down within 6 weeks.
Wow.
Okay, so we know a lot happened on that day, and we're going to get to it. But for our audience on the podcast, our national audience on the podcast, I want to take you back a little bit.
Okay.
So this year, your career goes back obviously more than just a few weeks ago. You sat in the legislature for more than a decade. You have said that you won't run again in October. I'm curious what the issues were or what the catalyst was to drive you into politics in the first place.
Oh, well, a whole bunch of things. And again, as a Jewish woman, for me, it's always been Tikkun Olam, heal the world, has been a prime driver in my life. I can't remember not having that as part of who I was. But I do remember the moment or the challenge in my community in Coquitlam, which is a suburb of Vancouver. There were homeless people that were suddenly appearing in my community. And the church around the corner from my house wanted to host a cold, wet weather mat program for these 30 people that we've identified in our community that were living down by the river. And I remember my neighbors, in the neighborhood being really worried about those people, air quotes, coming into our neighborhood. And I just felt like that was wrong. I was thrilled that the local church was going to be opening up their doors, providing comfort and help and food and warmth, and perhaps opportunity for folks who are homeless. And so I went to my very first city council meeting in 2007. I'd always voted, but I'd never really been an activist per se.
Right.
And my daughter, who's joining us here today, she was taking a social justice class. And I've always believed that lead by example. Mom, you have something to say, you go and you find the right place to say it. And I remember writing the speech. My hands were shaking. I was standing at the podium. We only had, I think, 5 minutes. And I talked about why I thought it was important. It was one of the largest public hearings that the city of Coquitlam had. It went until 2 a.m. Wow. Started at 8 p.m. It was very divisive in the community. The council of the day made the right decision. They allowed this program to happen. And it was another city councilor who said, Selina, you should run for office. And I said, why would I do that? People like me.
Oh, wow. Oh.
But it was almost like I just got a little bit of a bug around seeing that my voice could make a difference for people in my community. And I saw it in action. So there was something to be said about seeing it in action at the local level. And people said, well, maybe you should run. And in 2008, I put my name forward for city council. And some folks were saying, well, you're never going to win. You never win the first time. And I thought, pretty competitive. I don't like to lose.
I love that.
And so I worked really hard. It's hard work. It is hard work. And I won. That election and haven't looked back.
Okay, I want to talk about that election because, well, not that election. I want to talk about your election to the legislature. You knew I was going to say that because what an election night. I don't think I would have survived it because on election night, they told you lost.
I did lose on election night.
And then in BC, we have judicial recounts that you have to do. I think it's under 100 votes.
Well, it was more than that.
Oh.
So I lost by about 105 or 106 ballots on election night.
Wow.
And this is where I don't believe polls ever, because I was to be the sure thing. Everyone kept saying, oh, Selina will win. And I just thought, no, you work the doorstep. And there were some things for those political geeks who pay attention to every single election.
Yeah.
There was a shift that happened. Adrian Dix was the leader. There was a shift that happened around the pipeline messaging. Anyway, long story short, I felt the change on the doorstep. Ballots were counted. I lost by 105 votes. We were devastated. I was devastated. I am very competitive.
And
We see a theme here.
and my campaign manager said, you know what, we're New Democrats. New Democrats vote all over the province because you're allowed to vote anywhere in the province. And so we have absentee ballots here in British Columbia. So there's going to be a lot of absentee ballots. And so we had to wait 2 weeks for the absentee ballots to be counted. There were 2,000 of them. And so 2 weeks later, and I was at a council meeting, so I was still a councillor, and I was squeezing May Reed's hand. She was a city councillor. And I was squeezing her hand, and I kept checking my phone, but we're in a meeting, and so I'm trying to pay attention, but I really can't. I'm checking my phone. I was squeezing her hand.
Not.
And my campaign manager was saying, okay, you're down by 40 votes. You're down by 20 votes. Okay, you're up by 6 votes. And that night I was up by 35 votes.
No.
But I had another count, and that was a judicial recount. So I had 3 election nights in like 3 or 4 weeks. Best weight loss program ever.
I'm sure. I have no doubt. I stressed listening to it. You ended up winning by 41 votes.
Wow.
And they say every vote counts. It really does.
You were the actual living expression of every vote counts.
Yeah.
And we had a street party that year in my neighborhood. We had a little gathering, and everyone took credit for my win.
That's hilarious. It's a community sport, isn't it?
It's a community sport.
So you become an MLA under Premier Horgan.
No, that was, we were in opposition.
You were in
So
opposition.
So
That's
I've had the
right.
benefit of being opposition, being in a minority government, and being in a majority government. So
Okay.
I got to experience it all.
So let's fast forward when you came government
2017.
2017.
and then you were with Premier Horgan. I want to talk about this because I think your story is an interesting story of relationships as well. So I was curious, and Rachel and I talked about this before today, this idea of those relationships and how they sort of follow along your story. And I'm curious about your relationship with Premier Horgan.
Oh, he was actually the one who convinced me to run provincially. I still love local government. I still feel like it is closest to the people, and it is so important. Making sure that your pipes in the groundwork is so critical to all of us, but we don't appreciate it. It's not the sexy order of government typically, but it is, I think, one of the most important orders of government. And so I was asked to run. Diane Thorne, who was the MLA in my area, Coquitlam-Larderville, she was retiring, and so they tapped me on the shoulder, and I said, I don't know, I really like local government, and I'm not a big partisan. Like I can do partisan, but I'm not a hyper partisan. It's not my thing. And it's like, no, you'd be good. You can make some policy decisions, and I don't know. And it turns out my husband had bought me for my birthday that year tickets to see Great Big Sea in Newfoundland.
Wow. All the way up there.
All the way up there.
Good husband.
He's a great husband. And Selina's husband. And Diane Thorne, who was the sitting MLA, had a place out in Trinity at the time in Newfoundland, and she said, "Oh, you're coming to Newfoundland? Well, John and Ellie Horgan are coming. We'll all go see Great Big Sea together." And it was the first time I met John Horgan. So the 6 of us, Diane and her husband, and John and Ellie and Dan and I, went to see Great Big Sea, and we hung out in St. John's. And what was great was we go into a pub, because of course in St. John's you got to go to a pub. And John grabs me and says, "Well, come on over here, Selina. Let's just go talk in the corner." And Ellie grabs Dan and said, "And you're with me."
They knew what they were doing.
Divide and conquer. And he convinced me that it would be a good thing for me to do. And so I said, yes, I would run.
Okay.
Wow. All that I know about John Horgan, I would love to be having a beer with him while watching Great Big Sea in Halifax. I'll tell you that much. That sounds amazing. 2017. You were appointed to cabinet right away by Premier Horgan.
Yeah.
For those that don't remember, Premier Horgan didn't win that election. Christy Clark kind of was the premier for like 2 days, I think. And then the NDP, speaking of confidence and supply motions, the NDP and the Greens in British Columbia formed a government.
Yes.
And John Horgan became premier, and you went to cabinet. What was that period of
just crazy transition like as somebody that was sitting at the cabinet table?
It was, well, first of all, I have to say there are many funny stories that happened in that time. So there is a story of one of our colleagues, an older gentleman who had to go to the bathroom, and we were voting on the throne speech that the BC Liberals had delivered.
Yeah.
And numbers were tight, remember? And we're going, where is he? No. And we couldn't find him, and he makes it just in time.
Oh my God.
And all he could talk about was the marble in the bathroom.
Oh,
It was the funniest.
not the fact that his vote was going to make you the government of the
Yeah.
province.
Anyway, and I do remember watching very carefully because John had to go to the Lieutenant Governor's house
Right.
just to declare that he could form government. And we were watching the door on video on screen, and I had to catch a flight home, and he wasn't coming out, and so I catch a flight home. You can't watch your screen on the flight; they don't let you do that. And so getting to the restaurant with my family, we were grabbing a bite to eat, and here I am in the restaurant, still watching this door that isn't opening and waiting for John to come out. And he finally comes out, and he announces to the media that he's been asked to form government.
Wow.
And I burst into tears.
Oh my
And the
God.
waitress comes over and says, "Is everything okay?" And my family says, "Everything is okay right now."
Wow.
It
Oh my
was
God,
pretty,
goosebumps.
it was a pretty fabulous
Wow.
moment. But it was crazy. It was trying to figure out where the pens were.
Yeah.
It was like, where are the bathrooms on this side of the building?
Right.
It was exciting, exhilarating, exhausting, overwhelming, and a little bit frightening because 5 million people were depending on us to do the things that they needed us to do as a government. And it has been the greatest honor of my life to have been in government and to get to deliver for the people of this province.
I feel that. I feel that.
Not only did you serve in government, but only 23 people have had the role of finance minister in this province. 5 of them have been women. You were one of them. You were finance minister during what can only be described as an absolutely insane time in Canadian history through the COVID-19 pandemic, and you navigated that on the province's behalf. A thought on that.
Well, I was following in Carol James's shoes. And what's interesting is Carol tells a story of reaching out to Carol Taylor when she became finance minister. And I think there's women finance ministers who understand the importance of the role and can do it in a nonpartisan way in terms of recognizing the need to pay attention to all of government, which is very different than when you're a minister responsible for a particular section of government. You're laser focused on your pieces, but when you're finance minister, you are looking at all of it. And it's no different than those women who are responsible for the family finances. How many women out there are responsible for the family finances? You too could be finance minister for the province of British Columbia. It's a good training ground. It is a very good training ground because you have to make choices. It's all about choices. And that means saying no. And one of the things that I really love to share was the real skill was in saying no to the premier, but he didn't realize that you said no. And that was the sign of a good, successful.
I love that.
Because he couldn't spend money unless I said it was okay.
What a power.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just like at home.
We love your husband. We love your husband. You spent a lot of time at the cabinet table, and I want people to really understand, you weren't just the finance minister, you weren't just the housing minister, you held multiple cabinet portfolios. You were in John Horgan's cabinet room for the entire time that he was there. What's your biggest takeaway from that cabinet table? What are you most proud of? What really stuck out for you?
Oh, well, there's a number of things. And I remember in the early days, I was a housing minister. I was also responsible for local government because I love local government. And I asked for local government, but then he said, oh yeah, and housing, and oh yeah, and TransLink. And I thought, oh, you're going to kill me. But it made sense, certainly at the time. It made sense to have all these files together. And I remember we were putting together the first housing plan that maybe in 20 years that we'd seen in this province. There hadn't been like a plan. And we committed to 114,000 homes that we would help deliver. And it was a big election promise. And I remember saying that we should be delivering housing for First Nations on reserve. And I know that public service would say, professional public service, like, well, it's federal responsibility. And it's like, I know that's a federal responsibility, but frankly, they've all failed for many years to deliver housing. And British Columbians who live on reserve, First Nations people who live on reserve are British Columbians too. And let's pitch it to cabinet. And I have to say it was one of my proudest moments because I was waiting for pushback. Because orders of government like to say, no, that's a different order of government. And they point fingers at the other. They have to deliver.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's sideways. But my colleagues all said, of course. I got no pushback and I expected it. And it was one of my proudest moments at that cabinet table because I was preparing all the arguments for what I was potentially going to get. And they were like, no, we're going to do that.
I was reading an article or our column today, and I can't recall which paper it was in. And somebody was saying maybe the federal government should take a look at BC if they want to see how to do housing.
Yeah, they should.
And I thought, and now we're talking about it. We're talking about the plans that you laid that led to this moment where people can look to the province to say, here's the blueprint, which is remarkable. It's a legacy. Do you want to take the next one?
I do, but before we get into the next question, I want to ask you something that came to mind. Are you going to run for mayor of Coquitlam?
Oh, you're like the fourth person this week to ask me that.
I like being the first.
I went for a walk the other day. It's beautiful, and I walked past some neighbor I hadn't seen in a while, and she's like, "Please tell me you're going to run for mayor." And I'm just like, "Mary, why would
You got a good runway, a couple of years.
I never
Call
say
me.
no. I
Rachel's
never say no.
available.
Yeah, call me. Okay, we'll leave that for now, but we might come back to it. Okay. There's some speculation about your relationship historically with David Eby. When he appointed you to Minister of Advanced Education from Finance, there was a lot of talk about potentially that being a demotion when he came in as Premier. What was your relationship with him when he, you were close to John Horgan, and then David Eby came in. He was your caucus colleague, Attorney General, before being the Premier. What was your relationship like?
And did you consider that a demotion at the time?
So let's talk about the demotion thing.
Yeah.
It's not a demotion.
Okay.
Right? It's a different role.
Yep.
And I actually got very insulted with some of the press gallery when they would say that, and it was always men, by the way. You call it a demotion. And I just said, why would you say that? It's a different role.
Yeah.
And while I was finance minister, so there's a bit of a story about how this played out. So while I was finance minister, my colleagues, whether it was Minister of Health, the Minister of Education, they would all talk about all the plans they had to do all these great things. And I was saying, and so where are you going to hire people to do these great things? Because you're right, we need more nurses. I can give you funding for more nurses, but if we're not training more nurses, those are that money gets lost, right? It doesn't get spent. Not that it gets lost, you know exactly where it is, but it doesn't get spent. Okay. And so you want to use the resources that you have wisely. But if you can't hire nurses, then that money should be allocated somewhere else. And so I had spent the last probably 8 to 10 months of my time as finance minister pushing my my cabinet colleagues on where are you going to hire people. We need to build more housing. Do we have enough people to build the housing? Because that's what we were hearing. Was that we didn't have the talent or the skills needed. People weren't trained up. And that had been my big bugaboo while I was finance minister. So when David called to say, listen, I'd really like you to take the advanced ed file and skills training file, because we need these folks skilled up. You've been bugging us, right? And now you get to do it. So I knew what needed to happen. And so the decision, I'm not going to say I knew the decision, how we made the decision, but that's how I understood the decision. Because he did say, you've been bugging us about this for some time. I want you to fix it. And so that's why I was moved over. That's how I understand why I was moved over.
And what about your relationship with David?
It's different from John Horgan. It's a different relationship. He's a different person.
Yep.
And that's okay. So it's collegial, it's friendly. John is more, we're friends more. I'm not friends with David Eby. He's a colleague of mine. And that's okay too. Yeah.
I want to be friends with John. He seems like a really fun guy.
He is a really fun guy.
He's got a little more free time now, so maybe I'll go with him. Where is he? Germany?
He's in Germany. He's the ambassador.
Yes.
His Excellency now.
His
We call him His
Excellency.
Excellency.
Gosh, we're calling him wrong.
Okay, let's talk about your experience as minister post October 7th. October 7th, the attack in Israel happens. You noted that you found yourself as the ambassador of the Jewish community at the cabinet table. What was that like?
So I've been the ambassador for the Jewish community since we formed government. And I have to say, John Horgan kept saying, was I a mensch? Every time he connected, he's like, was I a mensch? He loves that word. And I say, yes, John, you are a mensch. He wanted to do right by the community, but it's also foreign to him. And so he recognized that. And so he would always ask my advice. What does the community need? How can I help? And that was sort of the dialogue that would happen. Like, should I go to this event? Yes, John, you should be at Kristallnacht. Yes, you could. This is what you do. You go in, you put the kippah on your head, and you go to the synagogue, giving him sort of step-by-step instructions. Because he didn't want to make a mistake. He wanted to be respectful. And so that was really important to him. And so I was his go-to. And that continued right through that with David as well. David, I think, had more interaction with the Jewish community, given who he is, and his writing, he's just more familiar. So didn't need that kind of advice, but it was more, where's the organized Jewish community on these sorts of things? And so I was the go-to for David as well.
And post October 7th, did that role change? Did it morph? Was there colleagues coming to you to talk about it?
No one came to talk about it. That was part of the problem. But I was talking to them. So because of my role, and after October 7th, we certainly saw the impact to the Jewish community here. And so I stepped up in a leadership role. I was, when the community gathered in the days after October 7th to gather in grief, the opportunity was, okay, so who's going to speak on behalf of government? Should it be David? Should it be me? We decided it should be me because I can make the first connection. It's my community. And then afterwards, David would take lead around that. So we made a thoughtful decision about how to balance, the head of government versus the liaison with government. My sense, and again, I'm looking back, my sense is that some of my colleagues, I don't think really understood the impact that October 7th had on the Jewish community. I don't think at the time they understood, even though I was saying, you need to come. Where are you? I don't think they had a full appreciation for it.
You have said publicly that you felt like you had a target on your back after this time. What did you mean by that?
So the target, it wasn't until I took some very, I'll say, principled and strong decisions about what I was seeing mostly on campus. So it's because I had the post-secondary file and because of what we were seeing in post-secondary campuses, I had not just the space, but I think the responsibility to let university presidents know that government expected them to keep their campuses safe for everyone. And they weren't doing that as well as they could have. Some were doing better than others. And so I wanted them, and I communicated with them regularly, that government was there to help them and support them in doing the right thing to keep their campuses safe. Again, some took that to heart and trusted government, and others weren't as successful. And what I am led to believe is that on October 30th, when we announced Holocaust education would be mandatory in British Columbia, which And I wanted to give a shout out to my colleague Rob Fleming, because when he was education minister in 2017, he started that work, and COVID it fell off because COVID threw everything off the table in many places, and no one had picked it up again. And Marsha Lieberman is here in the audience, right there. I read her book this summer. Everyone should read her book. It's the Red Stairs. It's very good. And it just reminded me that we have this somewhere. And I talked to Rob about it, and he said, let's pick it up and make it happen. And so we were already moving Holocaust education into a mandatory requirement. We were already moving on that, but on October 30th, we made the announcement. And it was right after we made the announcement, Kristen Robinson from, I'm not going to say which outlet because I don't remember, I don't want to get it wrong, but it was Kristen, asked me about Natalie McKnight.
Tell us who that is.
She's was a professor at Langara who celebrated the massacre of October 7th. And which was devastating. And I spoke out very strongly on that night to the media that I thought that was abhorrent behavior. And then we started to see, certainly on social media, I was getting targeted a lot more. There was the BC NDP convention was in November. I was again yelled at, signs with my name, calling me all kinds of things. So there was certainly activity among the protesters, who I don't call, and I don't like that they're called pro-Palestinian, because I'm pro-Palestinian. They're anti-Israel. And they were pretty vicious. They were vicious. And that continued. And so there is some speculation that they were waiting. They were waiting for a opportunity to jump all over me in some way, shape, or form, which led to the January 30th panel discussion. And I've wondered since then, if I wasn't Jewish, would anyone have noticed?
Had you, prior to October 7th, had you felt targeted in that way ever before?
No. I certainly provincially, provincial Democrats, no, never. Federally is a different story. I think that's maybe a different conversation for a different time, because there had been lots of concerns around federal resolutions, anti-Israel resolutions that were beyond that, and a number of Jewish New Democrats from across the country, we had been in conversation and trying to work within the party to help them recognize that their obsession with anti-Israel was a problem, because when 2/3 of your resolutions of your top 30 resolutions deal with Israel, and you don't have anything about Sudan, about Syria, about Afghanistan, about like, what about the rest of the world? And so, I do make a distinction between the federal party and the provincial party.
We saw the federal party very active in that last week with that motion. So that is a whole other episode that we are going to talk. We can talk about that. We'll have you back. But I want to talk about January 30th. And the fallout from the now infamous quote. And I want to read your quote in its entirety because I've heard the abbreviated version everywhere. But let's hear the whole thing. You said, "We have a whole generation of 18 to 34-year-olds that have no idea about the Holocaust. They don't even think it happened. They don't understand that Israel was offered to the Jews who were displaced. They have no connection to how it started. They don't understand that it was a crappy piece of land with nothing on it. There were several thousand people, but other than that, it didn't produce an economy. It couldn't grow things. It didn't have anything on it." In response to that, within days, there were thousands calling for your resignation. Muslim leaders told the NDP that their representatives were no longer welcome in their sacred spaces. Your constituency office was vandalized, and you received credible death threats. What was going through your head?
Well, at which point?
As it was building.
As it was built. So as it was building, I can remember that Thursday afternoon I was actually doing a Steel and Vance show. That Thursday
With
afternoon.
the Steel and Jody Vance.
Yes,
it's a local TV show.
A local TV show in Czech, and it was starting to just buzz, and even they got attacked for even having me on the show, which was bizarre. It grew over Friday, and I was getting, I would say lovely notes from like our press gallery saying, "Hold steady, it'll be gone by Monday." Spoke with the Premier's office. They said, it'll be okay. Just, do you have my back? We've got your back. So it was just, and then, my Twitter stuff was just going bananas. I was pushing back a little bit. The Premier's office said, don't block people, just put the phone down. But it kept growing. And then by Monday or Sunday, the weekend is a bit of a blur. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating. It was pretty stressful. We had a caucus meeting Monday and Tuesday. And so by Sunday, the Premier was saying, they had to cancel a fundraiser. That was, I think, the Sunday night because there was going to be protests. The Premier was saying, well, I think maybe you should just talk to your colleagues and then maybe we'll have a discussion about what to do. And I just thought, you said, you have my back. I said, I have your back. I said, okay. And then, I went to the caucus meeting. I had to go in the back way with security because it was pretty vile out there.
Yeah.
They had already breached the front doors, so I had to go around the back. I talked to my caucus colleagues about, I apologized. And I'd already done apologies, right? I've done 2 apologies. And my apologies were about, I didn't mean for my words to hurt anybody. And if people are hurt by them, I want to understand what was hurtful and I want to make amends for that. My comments were about the quality of the land and trying to recognize that here in Canada, we have minerals, we have water, we have trees. And Israel really doesn't have any of that. Right, so the value of the land wasn't in the land, it was in the history, which is what I was trying to communicate. And I got back from the caucus meeting and waited for a phone call, and I got a phone call from the Premier who basically said, I don't see a path forward on a resignation.
Were you stunned by that?
I was. was stunned. I didn't expect it. I was sad. I was really sad. It's like, are you kidding me? And I felt betrayed.
Because when the story came out, David Eby made clear that this was your decision. Your story says the contrary.
So it was a negotiation. He wanted, because I said, and I sent a text. I said, the press release needs to say you asked for resignation, and I gave it. And then the phone call started. It's like, no, this needs to come from you. And it's like, well, it does come from me because you asked for it, right? And in the end, I said, listen, the most you're going to get is a joint decision. But some folks figured it out. I will give credit to Katie DeRosa, who's part of the press gallery, who figured it out, who saw the detail, like how things played out. And she was the first to basically say, not so sure that it happened that way. And at that point, it just felt like all I could say was it's a joint decision, because that's what the press release said. But it was a joint decision because I was told there was no path forward. Yeah. And that's how I heard it. If there's no path forward, then what does that mean? Yeah. Well, it means you probably ought to provide a resignation. Yeah. Well, okay, then I'm providing the resignation because you said there's no path forward.
Right.
So that's
and so on and so on.
That's the joint decision.
Okay, so I'm getting stressed. You apologized twice.
I did.
You committed to anti-Islamophobia training. The premier then comes out at a press conference. And I want to play this clip for you, and then we're going to talk about it.
We have reached a challenging but necessary decision that Selina will be stepping down in her role as Advanced Education Minister. These comments were wrong. They crossed the line. They were belittling and demeaning to a community of people that is already under profound pressure due to the war in the Middle East and already feeling that their voices aren't being heard. The depth of the work that Ms. Robinson needs to do in order to address the harms that she's caused is significant. And it is incompatible with her continuing as Minister of Advanced Education, given the volume and the depth of the work that she needs to do.
Given the volume and the depth of the work that she needs to do.
I just have to say, because I'm from Ontario, so I don't follow BC politics as closely.
Shame.
I know, I'm sorry to all the, but when I saw WTF, I was like, what kind of response is that?
Yes.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What kind of disproportionate response was that?
That's called politics. That was disgusting. That was so hurtful to me as a person. It was so hurtful. And the depth of the work needs to happen for the New Democrats, actually. That to me, that was incredibly painful. And what's interesting, and I have to say, I've spoken to a number of Muslim leaders, not political Muslim leaders, right? Imams, rabbis are all, they're politicians. Any rabbis in the audience? Sorry, but it's true. They are, because they have to be responsive to their boards, to their congregants, right? So the politicians. But I was talking to people who are in the Arab Muslim community, and I'm being very clear about the Arab Muslim community instead of the broad-based Muslim community, because this was about Arab lands in that region. And they have been delightful and warm and compassionate and eager to form relationship and understanding. And they didn't talk about the damage, the depth. Like this was so over the top, or so low to the bottom, actually. It was, and it was not necessary. Like that's the other thing, is that was not necessary. So the other part I think that's important to recognize is what was the pressure like for the premier? Right? Because I mean, so these anti-Israel protesters have been at the legislature. They've been, at universities. They've been everywhere. They were at the caucus meeting, and it was certainly very troublesome because it was so aggressive. So I already offered 2 apologies. That wasn't good enough for these protesters. Then I resigned.
Right.
And it still wasn't good enough because that is after I resigned that they defaced my community office with horrible things. So it was like that, even that wasn't good enough.
Right.
So again, it's like, so what is it that they were fighting for? They were looking to silence the Jewish minister. And my colleagues caved to that. And that broke my heart.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah, you. One of the things that really struck me when I read your resignation letter, have most of you read? And I know the National Post published it in full. I've never seen a resignation letter like that. Mostly when a minister resigns, there's a statement that's put out, maybe a presser. But what really struck me about your resignation letter is that words matter so much, and you use this refrain over and over again. You broke my heart. It was so powerful to read that. And you just said it. Was your heart broken?
Oh,
Was
it
that
was
the feeling?
shattering. Oh, my heart's still broken. I loved my job. And it was such a gift. And yeah, they broke my heart. I loved the work with my colleagues. I think we do good work. And you know, I was sharing with my husband, I've been sort of screen capturing messages that people sent me, like my previous colleagues sent me in those early days. And they talk about how much they love me, how much they care for me, but they thought that I needed to go. And I just, like, what is wrong with you? And the other thing that's really interesting is I've had a couple of, I'll say, backbenchers come up to me. You know, they're newbies to politics. Some of them are paper candidates, didn't expect to win, and lo and behold, you're now a politician. And
to the bathroom.
Exactly. And one of them, really very sweet, came up to me and said, I wasn't at the caucus meeting, so I didn't hear the discussion. I don't like what happened. And I said, thank you very much. I'm sorry that you weren't there too. Maybe your voice could have helped. And they're like, yeah, no one's going to listen to me. And I said, well, maybe they would have. And then they said, so you've had all these years in politics. You're a skilled politician. You're a skilled communicator. You've done right by all of your files. And you say something that upsets a group of people. And you get fired.
Yeah.
And this person said, I'm not going to say anything.
Right.
And so what's the message that gets delivered?
Yeah.
When, and now I'm not saying my words were inelegant, poor choice, whatever. I would do it differently again. But I also think that these anti-Israel folks were looking for a way to get me.
Well, let's just talk about a few things that your colleagues have said, because you referenced this as a double standard in your resignation letter. So you pointed out to a few situations where NDP caucus members said offensive things about or in relation to the Jewish community over the last few years. You mentioned Mental Health Minister Jennifer Whiteside, who shared content which attributed Israeli theft of Palestine to capitalism. You talked about MLA Leonard, who invited a member of Knesset who negated the existence of the state of Israel. You talked about Jag Group Brar, who quoted Nazi propagandist Joseph Goebbels in the House. You said MLA Rutledge apologized last year for comparing statements made by opposition MLAs to Nazis. Double standard. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
What was the fallout from all of those things?
So, I mean, and I also said in the letter that I didn't repeat their missteps in order to humiliate or shame them. Janet Rutledge, and I will give her credit, came to me personally and said, "Oh my God, Selina, I didn't realize it's not what I intended. I am so sorry." And I said, "You're forgiven. It's okay. You apologized in the house. Right. It's fine. You apologized on social media. It's fine. Just be careful." And so all of those, and there have been others, they do a public apology. They don't offer to take anti-Semitism training. I want you to know that. Because words do matter. And sometimes we do not pick the best words.
Yes.
Sometimes we do not. It doesn't mean that you think a certain way or that you behave a certain way or that you have ill in your heart. Sometimes you just pick crappy words.
No pun intended.
And so these folks were forgiven, and the Jewish community has forgiven them. There is one person that the Jewish community has not forgiven, and that's Mabel Amber, because it's a pattern, and she is the parliamentary secretary for anti-racism.
Parliamentary secretary for anti-racism.
And this is the Jewish community wholesale, not Selina Robinson. This is from leaders in the Jewish community who are puzzled by her role. And again, because I have been the liaison, when the Jewish community leadership says, "Selina, this is a problem," I go to the Premier's office and I say, "Okay, the community says it's a problem. What are you going to do about it?" And most recently, what the Premier's office decided was, okay, if this is a problem, if Mabel's role is a problem for the Jewish community, we'll have the Jewish community work directly with the Attorney General, Nikki Sharma, because she's responsible for the anti-racism file. And so the Jewish community gets pulled out. All the other communities can work with Mabel, but the Jewish community, this was their solution. And frankly, it's not good enough.
Did any of them reach out to you after you resigned? Any of the people that you noted in your letter? Any of the people that had these issues that related to the Jewish community? Not one.
No, not a single person.
Sorry, I'm just so stunned by that.
What did carry you through those days?
Alcohol.
Fair, totally fair. Woo!
Okay, well, not really. My family, the Jewish community has been and beyond, not just the Jewish community. Jewish community has been outstanding. People have sent the loveliest notes to me. One arrived in the mail today from a woman who lives on Gabriel Island. I have no idea who she is. And she just filled it with, "We're with you, I support you. And here are my neighbors," and her neighbors wrote their names down.
The whole island.
It was just, right? People just said, "No, you got shafted. And what happened wasn't okay." I also want to say that the press gallery has been outstanding.
Wow.
And very few politicians will say that.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Media.
Partly because, I've been committed to them to give them the stories they need because they have a job to do.
Right.
And we, as politicians, should be respecting them more, I think. And as Canadians, we should be making sure that we have good journalism. Because part of what we are seeing now is because of the state of journalism in Canada and I think just around the world, because the amount of misinformation that is floating out there, because everyone gets to just put whatever they want out there, I think risks our democracy. And so I have been expressing for some time to the press gallery that I'm worried for their professions, because we need them to communicate, to disseminate, to break down what's happening so that regular folks understand, because you're right. I listened to you earlier in the podcast. Most folks don't hang on to every little motion that is happening and what it means. And nor should they, I would argue. Right. But you need someone to interpret for you about when you should be paying attention. Right. And a good press gallery and good journalists help us do that. And they're a dying breed, unfortunately. And so that's one of the things that I worry about. And I think part of what we are seeing is the disintegration of good journalism, because people don't know the history of Israel. They don't understand anti-Semitism. And there's professional communicators aren't able to deliver that information.
How do you move forward? Where do you go from here? You said you're going to sit as an MLA until October 19th. Mark your calendars. It's election day.
Yeah.
What are you going to do after that?
Well, people ask me that, and I keep saying, I'm going to go to Disneyland.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. But I also didn't think that I would ever be a politician. So you never know what's going to happen. I did promise my husband that I
sit here in the front row listening.
That I wouldn't commit to anything, like any sort of permanent something until January, until 2025. That I would sit out the fall, right? Because the rent drops in September, so really, the fall. And then we'll see. My door. I've always believed that opportunity presents itself, and you need to have the courage to open the door. So any woman who's listening out there who thinks that maybe politics is a good choice, it is a good choice. It is a good choice. I know it's hard. I've never worked harder in my life, but I've also never been prouder or felt more privileged or felt so lucky to be able to participate in political life, even through the hard work. And we need good people. We need good people to run.
One of the things we talk about on the podcast a lot is we believe strongly that one of the biggest barriers to women entering politics, and the podcast for sure isn't about let's get a whole bunch of people lined up to run, but even entertaining the discussions around politics is because of how the tone has changed, how combative, how ugly, how nasty it's become. Well, you've gone through this incredible thing, and still you're looking at it and you're sharing with our audience that there's still beauty there. There's still purpose there. There's still reason to believe and be a part of it. Yeah, I believe you. You genuinely believe that.
Yeah. Well, there's a fellow that I read about in a local paper, one of the Nanaimo papers. That's the other thing about being a politician. You read every single paper. You read every bit of news. It's crazy. But this was a fellow, you may have read about him. His sister had called him from Nanaimo. He was living in New Brunswick, First Nations fellow. And he heard that you could go to school. You can go to post-secondary for free if you were a former youth in care, which is something that I brought in. And it didn't matter how old you were, because for a while it was till the age of 26. And then we said, well, you know what? If you've been a former youth in care, you're not ready to go to school for a little longer. Right. And so it didn't matter how old you were. And so this fellow got on a bicycle in New Brunswick and rode across the country. Wow. And I wanted to meet him because he was incredible. And I did. I met him in a coffee shop and made everyone nervous. My chief of staff said, you can't meet somebody. I'm a politician. I meet people all the time. I'll be fine. I'll meet him in a public place, I promise. Loveliest man, and so excited to go to school. So excited. And then I gave him my phone number, and so he texts me. This is the part that I love. He texts me because he wanted to go to Rose, and that wasn't going to work. He was going to go to Camosun College. And he's like, fine. But then there was this barrier, and it had to do with getting some additional funds. And two programs weren't coordinated. And in order to get the funds that he was entitled to, he couldn't access another program. It became a little bit crazy, and it was about the bureaucracy not being in sync. And I said, leave it with me. And I got it fixed within 48 hours, and he got his money so that he could get his computer, and he could get his books, he can get everything that he needed. And I thought, I made that happen.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that matters.
Do you think he'll miss it?
I already miss it. I already miss it. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to run anyway. So like I was 50-50 in the summer, with aging parents. Sorry, Dad, you are aging. The audience here. I want to spend more time with my in-laws, with my dad. My kids, they're in the audience too, talking about having kids. They could be a puppy. So
No pressure.
So I want to be around. I want to be around for that, and and it's a 4-year commitment. So for me, it's like for the next 4 years, it means me being in Victoria, me flying all around the province, doing the job, which I take very seriously. Or do I want to be doing something else and being around to be that puppy and be that daughter that and travel with my husband, who'd already said, you could run again. I'll just send you postcards. He'll be traveling. So all of that coming together. And so I called David in December to tell him that I wasn't running again. And I did say to him, I'm not going to run. He was very surprised. He says, I wasn't expecting that. And I said, I know, I love the job. These are the reasons why I'm not running. And I did say to him, and October 7th changed things for me in caucus. And he didn't ask why.
Do you think it made it easier for him to ask you to resign, knowing that you weren't going to run anyway?
I don't, possibly. I mean, initially the thought was, well, let's just tell people you're not running again. Maybe that'll settle down, the hordes. We had planned that I was on my 60th birthday. I would announce that I wasn't running again. But instead, I just announced that I was resigning from caucus on my 60th birthday.
Wow.
That was my birthday present to myself. The 5 weeks where I was in caucus and not in cabinet, I just felt so betrayed, and I was so heartbroken and going into the caucus room, every day. And I just felt disconnected. I just felt so hurt. And people wanted to engage. And they did send me heart emojis, hug emojis. They wanted to hug me. I'm thinking, I don't need a hug.
Yeah.
I don't need a hug. I have other people to hug me. I don't need you to hug me. And I said in my resignation letter from someone who's my friend, I don't need your heart emojis. I need you to stand up to anti-Semitism. And she said, we always do. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. So you think you're standing up to it, but you're not. You are not. And so, when I had pitched to the premier, I gave him one last, kick at the can of how I could contribute was, let's all do anti-Islamophobia training and anti-Semitism training. Let's be better. And let me try to bridge these communities together. We're hurting so much. And there's so much. It's not conflict, it's just angst. We're communities in angst. And can we here in Canada, can we here in British Columbia find a path where we can come together and weep together and be afraid together? Wouldn't that be great if government could help facilitate that? I think that's the role of leadership. And when I was told that was too political, then I knew that to me that was the last. I had nothing left. I have nothing left to give. I had nothing left. I was done, and so I needed to leave, and I needed to be able to talk about it.
Have you spoken to David Ely since?
very formally about an event, a Persian event, where he was on stage and I was on stage, and he just wanted to make sure I was getting introduced. And I said, "Oh no, don't you worry. These are my friends," because he said, "They're going to introduce me. I'm good." And to his credit, he wanted to make sure that I got introduced because two of my previous colleagues were with him, and he was introducing them as part of the Democrat caucus.
Right.
But the Persian community has been very much in sync with the Jewish community, understanding. They have been with us. And so when they introduced me, they took me, hugged me, talked about me and about how I've been working for the community. So I got a much better introduction than the previous.
Okay, I think we have two more questions. I'm going to ask my last one, and then I'll hand it over to Amanda. What's your message coming out of this? This is your stage. This is your audience. What do you want people to know?
Well, what I want people to know is that we have a lot of work to do around anti-Semitism in this country. And progressives have a lot of work to do to help make sure that folks in our world understand what anti-Semitism is, what it looks like, because that's not what I'm seeing. It's not. It's a blind spot. But I also want to say that we need good people to represent us. We need good people, and there have been particularly women who've come up to me who I have encouraged to run for us in October, who have said, "What am I doing?" And I said, "No, you still need to run, but eyes wide open. And you need to know what your values are." And I say to people, there's no perfect party. It doesn't exist. There's a party of best fit.
Yeah, I like that.
There's a party of best fit. And so New Democrats fit me. And they're still, in many ways, a party of best fit for me. But this became a place where it no longer fit. The party changed. And so I didn't leave the party left me. And so I am a little bit in the wilderness right now. So I don't know what I'm going to do around that. But we still need good people to run. And so I want to encourage all the good people out there to put their name forward.
I love that. All right, closing question.
There's no better question to ask.
There's no better question.
That was, I wish it was coming from Ontario. I'm sorry, not paying, but you are such a powerful speaker who obviously, what a force you must have been in cabinet, what a force you must have been at that table. They were clearly very lucky to have you. If I was in a different place, I'd be like, the Liberals are looking for some people to run in the federal election.
They are.
I feel like she's going to get her fair share of calls. I've also had eye shot to your husband, most of this, and you can just feel how proud he is of you. So I just had to acknowledge that. Your whole family must be. This community, I feel, very much is. Anyway, you have moved me. I think we have to leave it there because we've come so far.
Yeah.
I don't know that we can go on and on, although I'd love to. So I want to thank you. This has been, like I said, a moving conversation. I really have had chills so many times through this conversation tonight. We want to thank you for your openness, for your insight, for sharing your story with us. We want to thank our amazing audience, our first live audience. Woo! Thank you. We love you guys. It's so incredible to have that energy actually in the room. So we can't thank you enough for bringing that to us.
We're gonna have to start playing like laugh tracks now. We're used to it.
The House of Commons is on break next week, which means we are too. So we'll speak to you soon.